This is Damian Macy. I'm representing the Friends of the Marshall Public Library, and it is Thursday, August the 6th, 2015, and this interview is with Mr. Terry Welsh of Marshall. He's been basically a lifelong resident of here, had an interesting background, and even today has some interesting things to tell about his business and things that he's involved with. So with that, I'll introduce you to Terry Welsh.
Okay, well, I was born and raised here in Marshall. I was born in 1958. My dad was Ray Welsh and Mom was Beverly Welsh, and I had 4 other siblings, 2 brothers and 2 sisters. We grew up on the farm, so we was around a lot of different things, and as the years went through, actually to start with, when we worked on the farm a lot. I think when about the age of 5, we had chickens and hogs on the farm and everything, and we were big in the chickens at the time and layers and doing the egg business and everything. And I remember at 5 years old starting to work on the farm, gathering eggs for 25 cents an hour, and that was a lot of fun. I mean, through the years growing up, it was with it was 3 brothers, my dad Ray, Uncle Joe, and Uncle Robert, and they all farmed together and had the livestock, and we took care of everything and grew up with that. And I tell you, there never was a dull moment. I mean, we always had things to do. I mean, we played, had all kind of games. Of course, back then we didn't have video games and sit on and watch TV and all that. We was out running around doing things and finding things in the woods to do, or going through the barns and seeing what was in them. But I mean, we had a lot of fun growing up. But it's kind of funny back then how you found things to do and occupy your time versus what a lot of them do today. But growing up with the livestock, that was fun. Then we kind of come through, and I don't know.
Terry, you mentioned the chickens.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have an egg route, or did you sell them to wholesale or retail? Or
Yeah, actually, we was one of the only ones that produced, processed, and marketed our eggs. And I remember when we built the first, it was really pretty unique. I think we built the first part of that building in 1962, and that was one of the first automated buildings in the country. We had floor layers. That building was 14,000 hens, which was very big at the time, and it amazes me now when I look back at the automation at that time. I mean, we sit in front of a machine and that track ran 300 feet down through the building, down and back, and brought every egg to you. So you sit there on a gathering belt and pick them eggs up and put them in the cartons, and then we had coolers, and then when we were done, twice a week we graded eggs. We'd wash them, candle them, wash them, and sort them. And it was really good for us kids, because I tell you, we all worked at young ages. There was, there's probably 6 or 7 of us at one time, and 2, they always had projects in the summer. So when we was out of school, we had building projects. We either built sheds, we built bins, we poured concrete.
You didn't have to worry about not having something to do.
Job security, but we had job security. But anyway, it was funny. A lot of the things we done back in, but the chickens was really neat. I mean, it was really, we had my Aunt Helen Tingley. She was she delivered eggs a couple times a week, and I remember it was always fun. She would always go, and the people, we'd go in the Sycamore building and hand deliver to people.
That's what it was.
That was it's odd. We had a lot of grocery stores, ISU, we had all their business. Within a 30-mile radius, we pretty well had most of the businesses. I remember Galloway's Red and White down in Robinson, Raymond's Cafe. I don't know if you remember when was out here on the intersection. we done that, but I remember we always wanted to go with Aunt Helen. We always fought over who got to go with her because she had a couple on her route that was older people, and they'd give you suckers, candy, bubble gum, and boy, we knew what days we wanted to go to meet them certain people. But yeah, I do remember like the Sycamore building. You go in there, and some of them in Terre Haute, and we'd go floor by floor. And you'd just walk up at the desk of those people, and they'd say, "Hey, I'll take a dozen eggs, or I'll take 2."
Had they ordered anything in advance? Or
No,
was it strictly that day what you had available?
Yeah, it's we always had so much in the. She had a pickup, and then my Uncle Robert had routes with a van. But yeah, we'd always go with her, and the people. I mean, they look forward to seeing you. I mean, you go in there, but yeah, we just basically peddled the eggs, and that was pretty neat. You know. And
did you ever, quote, scramble any eggs before they got to the
yeah, we would have the occasional egg fight. I remember
no, sure,
we'd
yeah.
all, there'd be times, and when we processed those eggs, you'd have, when you candled them, any imperfections you pulled out, you had cracked eggs, you had rejects. So those were the ones we always discarded on each other, I think we had. But yeah, like I said,
anything much messier than that.
yeah, we were constructive in a lot of the things we done, and having fun was one of them. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. So
With that kind of as background, where did you go to school?
Marshall, we started school. I remember started down at the kindergarten was down south of town. Was that the Ohio building?
The old Ohio building?
Yeah, Miss Claypool was my kindergarten teacher, and had her, and then started out at South School for grades 1 through 3. Yeah, I remember one of the most memorable things was my 4th grade year. We got the brand new school at North School, and that was my 4th grade year. And yeah, I remember that it was kind of weird with all the kids because they kind of broke up the north side and the south side of town. All the ones north got to go to the new school, and I think a lot of the south side kids kind of resented that because we got the brand new school. And yeah, I remember that year. That was a lot of fun. It was really neat and everything. I'm not sure what year that was. It was my 4th grade year. So,
did you have a particular interest in studies? Science, history, or
back then I always liked math. I was just always a numbers person. Always enjoyed numbers, and reading. I like to read, and but social studies is okay. English, that was mandatory. So all the way through. So you went through it. PE was always fun, but yeah, it was okay.
Some particular memories about high school that stick in your mind?
Oh, yeah, we went to junior high out here, and then started high school. Played sports, played football my freshman year, and I didn't go out my sophomore year. Kind of was always had an interest in farming. I always knew that's what I was going to do. And the problem was when I got a little older, probably about the time I got in high school, I realized then that I had 2 cousins and a brother that was older than me, so I was kind of the bottom person, and I always thought, boy, I need to hurry up and get back to the farm because I'm going to get back. I'm going to be the bottom of the pole on all the jobs and everything. But it was kind of neat because back in the early years when it was the 3 of them, my dad, Ray, and then Uncle Joe and Uncle Robert, they all had their sections, or their parts. Uncle Joe was kind of in charge of the crops and done the financings, and Dad was in charge of the hogs, and Uncle Robert was in charge of the chickens. And so, I mean, they all worked together, and when it come time to farm, they all chipped in and done that. And
True family affair.
Yeah, it was really neat. It was really neat how that all worked out. And then I think about 1968, Uncle Robert decided he wanted to seek something else. He wanted something a little more challenging, so he moved out. He sold out and moved out to Albuquerque, New Mexico. and he was all fired up in the silver mines. That's when that was hot out there, and so he went out there and worked a few years, and it didn't materialize, but just to show you the type of individual all these guys were, I mean, he got into the business of laundromats. And I don't know how he started, but he had the opportunity to buy a laundromat. And so he bought that one, and just like, with the background they all had and the work ethics, I mean, he ended up growing, I think at one time he had 7 or 8 laundromats out there.
Wow.
And then he knew how to fine-tune them and really work them. And I remember going out there as kids helping them and count the money. They had all the quarter machines and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And the vending machines, he had all them. Some of them kind of formed them out, but he kept them, and he bought all the materials and done everything, but ended up very successful doing that. I mean, it was really something how, he went out for one thing and then ended up, it ended up going into something else, and something he'd never had any idea, anything to do with, but how he, adjusted and went into that and become one of the premier people out there.
I know he was always out there and came back on visits, but did he ever consider coming back?
No.
Returning here to farm?
And in the latter years, when he come back here, that's one thing he always said. Coming back, he never had a regret about leaving the farm, but he knew with our family, he always enjoyed coming back to see what we'd done new. He said he'd always come back 2 or 3 times a year. And he said it was just amazing every time he come back, the new things we'd done or the buildings we'd built, or just the growth. I mean, it always amazed him, and in his latter years, he talked about that a lot. How everything kind of materialized from the early years on. But yeah, he said he never regretted leaving. That was it was just a time in his life. He just wanted something else, and
it worked
out
for him.
the best. Yeah. So.
Well, from all of those eggs and fried chicken, what was there that phased out or something at a point in time?
Yeah,
or you just
when
moved on to something else?
In the early '70s, probably '72, when Uncle Robert left in '68. I had an uncle, Ed C., that kind of took over the chickens, and they'd worked out a deal with him. And I'll tell you, early '70s, integration started into the chicken herds, into the layers. Tyson's, all of a sudden, them guys went from, hundreds of thousands of birds to the numbers just multiplied. And it got to be a big business, and I tell you, the writing was on the wall, but most of the kids, personally, I like the chickens probably better than the hogs. But the profitability and everything was, hogs was good too at the time, and so we decided to go one route or the other, and nobody really wanted to take care of them, manage the chickens. And of course, '72, I was pretty young, and all of us boys were, but they decided to shut the chickens down, so we got out of them. I think it's '72, and we converted that chicken house over to a hog house. And that took a summer. We went in there and poured all the concrete slats and took out the old flooring, and we done that. That was we made a pour every day. That building was 300 and some feet long, and we made an 8-foot pour every day. And we go in, pour about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and work the concrete, and get it pretty good shape by about 8 o'clock at night, and get up early the next morning, take the forms down, set up another row, and was ready to pour at 1 o'clock again the next day. And we done that 5 days a week all summer long until we had
a lot of concrete.
Yep. We got pretty good at it.
Did your dad or someone do some research on what type of facility you were going to have to raise hogs? Or from someone else who had already done it? Or?
Yeah, Dad was pretty instrumental in most of the ideas we done. The reason they worked so well together, Uncle Joe was always the one that he could put it together. He could make the plan. He could make it work. Dad would come in, and he had the ideas, and kind of where the hog industry was going, and the newest fads and everything. And they'd sit down and talk about it, and Uncle Joe would start drawing up the plans, and he could make it work, and everybody chipped in. But yeah, you never thought about hiring somebody to remodel a building and do all that work. I mean, Uncle Joe was good. He done all the wiring. He was very talented at that, and yeah, we put. I mean, everything we done was there. I mean, Dad was good with, carpentry skills. I mean, a lot of the pins we made out of oak boards, and yeah, we just made everything work, and it was fun. It was, but one thing I always remember when we was kids, and I look at today on the farm and having younger kids work. Back then, we really took it serious. I mean, if we done something wrong, we felt bad. And one thing when you done something wrong and they got on you, you made dang sure it never happened again. Whereas today, kids say, "Oh, what the heck, so what, that happens, But it does amaze me the responsibilities we had growing up and the pride we took in everything we done.
There's the word, I think, pride. Just seems
Yeah.
like youngsters, or maybe youth today, don't have at least as much pride as what an earlier generation did.
But a lot of times too, when we hire younger kids to come out, you try to work with them. And one thing, as I get older, you've got to have patience. That's one thing you got to have. And a lot of kids, at one time, I remember when I was in high school, I always said, talk to different people, and they'd say, well, if a farm boy ever come in for a job, he pretty well always got hired because he knew how to work. They had work ethic and not running the other kids down or anything. It's just, the opportunities we had was tremendous, and we were very lucky, very fortunate to be in those situations. So,
But it was that earlier generation, though, that kind of set those parameters, too.
Oh yeah. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. And
So in the hog business, what kind of volume or how were you?
well,
Right.
we actually went to high school. During that period, Dad run the hogs, and we were about 250 sows. So we marketed probably 3,000 to 4,000 head a year. And then I graduated in 1976, and at that time we decided to build the North Hog Unit, which is a 500 sow farrel to finish, which at the time was very big. And I had started Lakeland College. I'd went up there for ag production, and once we decided to put that unit up, I remember flying, and I was interested in the hogs, and I was going to be the one running that unit. And so I remember going ahead and we done that. We flew to Ohio, we flew to Nebraska, we flew to several different places looking at units, different builders to build the thing, and then the breeding stock. Breeding stock was a big thing. A lot of your companies were just starting to come in with better genetics, and the packers were looking for the quality hog at that time. So a lot of people were, gearing up to those the type hog each company was looking for. So, but we done that, and I remember too, once we decided to do that, I went 1 year to Lakeland College, and the second year we started bringing animals in, and I remember I was getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and feeding the sows and getting everything ready and going to school, drove up to Lakeland and come back at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, work late, and I said that lasted about a month or two, and that was in. I quit
Something's gotta
school.
give.
Yeah, so I quit school, and so I run that 500 sow farrel to finish, and I think that put out about 8,000 head a year, so that put us up to, close to 10,000, and so we run that, or I run that for a couple years, hired a couple guys to work with me, and then about that time, we went ahead and let one of the guys run that unit, and I went back to the old unit, and we rebuilt all of it. We moved the sows inside. That was really when we built that Sands unit. Actually, it was operational. We moved animals in August of '77. and started marketing hogs the summer of '78. And but it was at that time there was probably, I think that's probably put us at about 10,000 head a year, somewhere in there. And but that was one of the first units that the sows come inside and was in gestation crates. Prior to that, all the sows were outside in pens. And then we, so that was kind of the turn of a lot of the breed. I mean, you could better utilize the sows. Everybody got bred. You kept the sows in crates. They were individually fed. And as today, you know, a lot of people, they're going away from that. You got McDonald's and all these companies going away from farms, and they put a lot of pressure on it. But the thing that people don't understand is in a crate in an environmentally controlled building, you know, basically 65 to 75 degrees year round, there's no competition for feed. Yeah, they're in a crate, they stand up, they sit down, but it was always amazing how content those animals were in there, you know. But just with things going on today, PETA and all that, you know, it's just, it boggles your mind to be on the farm and look at these animals. And I mean, that's our bread and butter. So you take very good care of them.
Sure.
And some of the abuse, yeah, there's people out there an occasional time will get the news, and that's all that's on there. But that's 1% of the time and 99% of the time, because like I said, that's your bread and butter, and you do everything you can to make sure that animal's in perfect shape and at its highest production level, you know. And so.
You mentioned a large number of hogs there. That's a lot of ham.
Oh yeah.
Where did you market that or sell it to one producer or one packer? Or
yeah,
several?
And I'll tell you, that's one thing, kind of backing up a little bit too. You know, with a farming operation, we raised all of our own corn. Of course, you don't feed soybeans to animals, but soybean meal you bought. But we ground all of our own feed. We raised all of our own corn. We ground all of our own feed. And then then we went to market. We ended up with our own trucks. When we made the big move with that new unit, we bought a semi, and we started, I remember when we first started marketing hogs, we took them to several different packers. We went to Conn's was big in Cincinnati. Oscar Mayer was in Beardstown. Swift was in Louisville, Kentucky, which it was Armour back when we first started, and then it converted into Swift, bought them out. Wilson's was in St. Louis, a packing plant over there. You know, and then as time went on, they built the one in Logansport, and Tyson's up there, and then Delphi. You know, that was a relatively new plant too, but we took hogs to all of them and seen who done the best, where they cut out the best, and who was the best fit. But it kind of went in you know, different periods. I mean, I know we hauled 3 or 4 years to Cincinnati. Then we started going to Louisville, and then we went back to Beardstown. Oscar Mayer was big into, you know, the type animal we had, so we went up there for years. And I remember going up there, they'd pay a premium if we had the hogs there at daylight. So we loaded at midnight. We'd load at midnight and drive all night and get up there about daylight in the morning and unload, and that was the start of their kill for that day. So that was always challenging too.
There, you mentioned Tyson. I always associate them with the chickens and turkeys. Did they have ham and
yeah, they're in everything.
Everything?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't realize that.
Yep. Yep.
So from chickens to hogs, and bring that up to today. What's today?
Well, we're well, I might go back a little bit now. Actually, once we got started in the farming and everything, you know, I got married. I married Lisa Stinson. She grew up in Marshall too, south of town. We married in 1986, and then our first son was born, Cody. He was born in 87, and then Brooke was born in 89. So that was the start of our family. You know, had the Lisa and I and the 2 kids, and so that's the next generation, I guess, way it all started developing and everything. And the kids grew up on the farm out there, and you know, I do remember the way we grew up. I wanted Cody to be involved in the farm and everything, but you know how protective mothers are.
And your daughter's name is?
Brooke.
Brooke.
Brooke. So, but anyway, you know, that was, you know, they had the opportunity to grow up on the farm. Not as much, you know, things weren't, we didn't depend on the kids. And yeah, I always look back at a lot of the stuff built on the farm was awful cheap labor all through the years. And, you know, going back to that pay, I think when I hit junior high, I got up to $1 an hour, maybe 6 or 7. I got up to $1 an hour, and I can always remember that was such a milestone, because if I worked 5 hours, I knew I had $5, you know. But it's amazing how, and I remember too, when every month we got paid by the month, and they figured our hours up and they wrote us a check, and we had that check long enough to sign our name on the back. And that was it. That went into the savings account, we never touched it. And, you know, I always thought that was kind of odd, but you know what, as we got into high school and you wanted to buy a car, I mean, we had all kind of money. I mean, we worked hard for that money, and I remember the first car I bought my junior year was $5,500. And I'll tell you, I had a good bit of money in the bank, and I'll tell you, they always made us feel a little guilty when we spent that money. And I remember went in to pull that out, and after I bought that car, I thought, wow, that's $5,500 less.
What did I do, huh?
You know, I thought, boy, maybe I made a mistake. But you know, you wanted that car so bad, but after the initial purchase of it, then you kind of second thought, you know, they're $5,500 less than my savings account.
What kind of car it was?
It's a Grand Prix. The Grand Prix.
I bet that was bought here at a
Yeah, and I'll
place.
tell you something kind of funny about that too. My other brother, he had bought a car. He was 4 years older than me, and he got to buy a brand new car. Well, from 72 to 75, 76, those cars, that's actually 75, those cars went up quite a bit. And Dad told me I couldn't buy a new car. He said, a new car's out. So I thought, well, shoot. So I was over at Terre Haute, and of course Bowen was on Wabash then.
Yeah.
And I won the Grand Prix, and they had one, and it was a demo. It was a brand new, but it was a demo. So I remember I went and looked at it and
Little
come back.
discount there, huh?
Yep. So I come and I told Dad I found the car I want. We went over there, and of course it still had the sticker in it. And we walked up to the door, walked up the car, and I remember Dad saying, you know, you're not buying this car. I told you you're not buying a new car. And I said, well, Dad, it's not new. It's a demo. And boy, he kind of looked at me, and I said, yeah, it's a demo. It's got like 1,100 miles on it. So I pulled that one off on him. So I ended up almost getting a new car. But
So
yeah,
you got him convinced that
yeah,
that
I
was
bought the
for
car.
you.
He told me, so it's your money. That's what you want to buy. So I ended up with almost a new car. But yeah. But anyway, the kids come along and went through school and everything, and they were involved in sports. Cody played all the sports. He played on a traveling baseball team for years. Actually, his 8th grade year, they won the Little League World Series. The team he played on a team out of Indianapolis, and that was a lot of fun. We traveled all summer long, every weekend for him. Then Brooke come up, and she was always a cheerleader and everything, so that took time and everything. But you know, we always tried to make all the events. That is one thing I remember with Cody in Little League. I coached him for 9 years in Little League baseball, and that was one commitment I made, was that I was going to make all his games. And as hard as it was during farming seasons, I remember there'd be times that with being the coach, and I think maybe every year I might have missed one game when it was just impractical, or I just simply couldn't make it. But I remember Dad always say, you can't, you know, I'd tell him in the morning I'm going to leave at 5:30, got a game. That was fine then, but when I shut that tractor down, boy, it was like the end of the world. Boy, you can't do that. But you know what? We always managed, got everything done. But that is one thing I'm glad I stuck to, because the time spent with them kids is, I mean, it goes by in a flash, you know. And then I remember when Cody was done, I thought, well, that's good. The Little League. And then Lisa come in one day and she said, hey, Brooke's going to play softball. And I said, well, that's great. That's great. She says, well, you're going to
Good
coach
over
it.
again, huh?
She says, you're going to coach. I said, hey, nope, I'm not. I said, I don't know nothing about softball. She says, you're going to learn. So I'll never forget, we went to the first practice, and we got ready to practice, and Lisa goes, hey, I want to tell you something right now. And what's that? She goes, you can't get on these girls like you do the boys because they'll cry. So that always stuck with me. And I got to about the second or third game of the season before I had one cry on me.
You become a good sympathizer when the tears start flowing?
Yeah. That's always hard, but you know, those were always learning experiences. I tell you, boy, it just. And you know what? I probably enjoyed coaching the girls a little more than the boys.
Really?
They seemed a little bit more committed, and I thought when I got into it, but she played 2 years and then moved on, and that was about the end of my softball coaching abilities, you know, because
Don't plan to go back into that as a second career.
No, I enjoyed it at the time, but glad I spent the time with the kids. I mean, it's good to do things like that, because even today, those kids, when I see them kids out, they'll come up and they'll say, hey, they'll know who you are. Hey, you was my baseball coach, or you know, I remember you, or something, and you know, you sit and you try to remember, and for the most part, I can remember all their names, you know, but that means a lot when you know that you know you make a difference in some of them kids' lives and everything, and so, but yeah.
Did you or Cody, either one, when you were in high school, take ag?
Yeah, you know, that's interesting. My freshman year, Truman Spittler was our ag teacher.
Oh yeah.
And I took ag and got in the classroom, and I remember we'd be in there, and it was very easy for me. I mean, a lot of it was mathematical things. You know, remember old Truman would be in there, and he'd say, okay, we got old Bossy out here, and she eats 2 pounds of feed a day. We're going to go to town and buy enough for her for a week. So how many pounds are we going to have to buy? And I tell you, he was a character. He was a heck of a good guy and everything. But I done 1 year of that, and I'm not saying, I mean, I knew a lot of it. Most of it I knew, because we just grew up on the farm, and at that time I decided, you know, I wanted to take the math courses, the sciences. I was more interested in that than agriculture, because I knew my ag experience was coming from the farm firsthand, personal experience, and there wasn't anything that could replace that. So I remember my sophomore year was in study hall. At the end of my freshman year, I was in study hall, and Truman come up and he said, hey, I got a question. He says, you're not taking ag 2. Did I do something wrong? And I said, no. I said, no, I enjoyed you and everything, but I said, I need to pursue something. I just, you know, had other interest and everything. And
they call that diversification, I guess.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that was in my high school years and everything. And then, like I said, we got into the kids and everything. And then, let's see, probably forgetting a lot of stuff, but eventually I had a partnership with my dad. Well, I guess maybe go back to the Uncle Robert left in 1968 to go out to Albuquerque, and then in 85, up to 85, there was Uncle Joe and my dad and my brother and 2 cousins, and we started going separate ways. I mean, there was you know, the families kind of started, you know, going to each. Well, kind of one thing, some people said, well, what happened, you had too many chiefs and not enough Indians, because we all had sectors that we went in. I kind of took over the hogs, so I was in charge of all the hogs, and each one of us had a sector, and they were good about that. They had the help we needed. I mean, we worked with U of I on putting the partnership together, and they was very good about, you know, buying into the partnership, having a piece of it and everything. But that is one thing, when we all started that partnership, as Dad and Uncle Joe, they said, you know, whatever we do, you're not going to water our income down. So what we're going to do is we're going to start growing. So they started buying farm ground. that's one thing that we were very fortunate. We had parents that were willing to put their neck on the line, you know. But yeah, we bought a lot of farm ground. We expanded into hogs, and so we were very blessed in that way that we had, you know, the people that believed in us, and you know, so. But
Terry, most people, when they hear the word farm today, they think of corn, beans, wheat, some plants from the ground. And you haven't mentioned that. I know you have that ground. How long have you been making use of that?
the farmland, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, it's, I mean, you know, they started, actually, the brothers, when they all come back in, that was in the 50s. They all served in the, you know, they went to the military, you know, and everything. And actually, Grandma Jessie, I mean, she was the one that put everything together because they lost their dad at a young age. And so she was the one that pretty well ran the farm and everything. And they all went to service, but back in, you know, one boy could stay on the farm, and that was Uncle Joe. And so the other four, because there was an older brother, Uncle Hubert, and he was at the farm for a while, but I remember Uncle Joe always saying how hard he had it. He had to stay home and work, and everybody else got to go. One went in the Navy, one in the Marines, one in the Army, and they hit them all, and they got to go take it easy, and he had to work hard on the farm. But I mean, it was really something to how they held everything together, and they all come back, but coming up in the mid-80s, then so actually in '85 we split the farm, and Uncle Joe and his boys went one way, and Dad and I went the other way, and so that was the start of our partnership with my dad and everything, and that continued till 2008, and he retired, and then you know, I went ahead and bought it, and pretty well I've run it ever since then and everything. And yeah, we've expanded in several different things through the years. One of the things we did do in the farmland, you'd mentioned it earlier, we started tile plowing, started putting tile in the ground, and that's been, you know, an improvement on the ground. That's one thing you know, he's always taught at a young age, that you improve the land and leave it in better shape than when you started, and so that's always been implemented in our minds and everything. So we've done that, and then but yeah, later on, as the kids went through school and we got it done, Lisa realized one day, she said, you know, you better do something about these kids. These kids, said, you better hope when they start having little ones that they're around here close, because if they're not around here close, wherever they're at, I'm going to be there. So that's how we kind of got into another entity. You know, we had the opportunity to buy a greenhouse over in Terre Haute, and so we got into that as a tulip company. They raised tulips for 50 years over there, supposed to be the premier tulip in the Midwest, and so we got some interest in that and kind of leafed off into that, and we've grown it into a couple garden centers now. There's have a florist over there, and they're working into landscaping now, and actually Cody and his wife Lindsay run the thing now. They're in charge of everything over there. Cody actually come back one year on the farm, and then when that happened over there, we moved him over there and let him try to restructure that and get that going, and we've had a lot of growth over there, and so yeah, I might add that, you know, both of the kids got married. Cody got married in November of probably 2 years ago. Him and Lindsay, he married a gal that he met at Edwardsville going to college. Cody went to Southern Illinois University at Edwardsville. He graduated from over there, and that's where he met his wife, Lindsay, and then Brooke, she went to IU, and that's where she met her husband, Jeff Fatale. And so they're living in Chicago now. He's employed with GE Financial, got a good job up there. And then Brooke, she was with Bon-Ton Stores when they were in Milwaukee, and then she let that job go and she moved to Chicago, and now she's developed her own company with her cousin Tashina Castigar Bear, and they're doing T-shirts with positive sayings and promoting positive attitudes toward individuals and people, and they're really just, they launched that in March or April this year. So
Is that in Chicago?
Yeah, it's in Chicago. It's on the internet. The Tulip Company was one of the first stores that had her product, but one of the stores here in Marshall was one of the first here to carry it, and now they're. But what they do, every shirt they sell, they donate a shirt to kids in need, and so it's really starting to grow, and it's just exposure, what they're looking for, and everything. But it's I guess it goes back to our roots, the way we were brought up, and I mean, and I'm tickled to death that my two kids have that in them. I mean, they both hard workers, and want to make this place a better place, and very positive attitudes, and that's one thing my dad was always good about, positive attitude and your work ethic and everything. And
is the shirt they donate to charity or something in Chicago, or is it?
No, it's all over.
Somewhere else, foreign
there
countries?
Was like they went over to Peyton Manning. There's a school or something over there, and I probably know more than what I do. But it's to disabled, or St. Jude's Hospital. Okay. But they go and give them to kids like that, and yeah, it's very touching on what they do and everything, and it makes you proud that you've got your kids coming up that way, and I mean it's pretty neat. So.
About how many acres do you farm?
We just added acres. I mean, we picked up a pretty good chunk here this year. So yeah, we're up over 5,000 acres now what we farm, and I tell you, I enjoy it. I love it. I mean, there's just nothing like farming. I mean, it was in our blood from a young age, and we are actually out of the hogs. We pretty well phased out of them now. The hog cycle got vicious in '98, and it's just never been the same, and it just up and down too much. So we liquidated and went to rental, and we done that until last year, which would have been by July of 2014. So we no longer have hogs on the farm, so that's the first time in a long time. But we're putting all of our efforts into the farming end. And yeah, I've got a good crew of people, and I mean, I just love it. I mean, I look forward to getting up every day and going to do it. I mean, it just I just can't wait to get there and do it. It's still fun.
How many employees do you have then?
We've probably got 5 or 6, probably 5 full-time, a couple part-time, and then during harvest we'll add a few more and everything. But
what about the Tulip Company? Is that a cyclical thing, or
yeah, it is.
Is it year-round?
Cyclical. The bulbs all come from Holland. In 1st of September, they're cooled for 6 to 8 weeks, and then they're planted, and then we stage them. And so it's very hard to manipulate a tulip throughout the year. The earlier it is, the harder it is to manipulate it. But then you have to stage all them. You got to have your first big runs, Valentine's, and then it just kind of goes through. And usually by Mother's Day, that's pretty well the end of tulips. So it's a quick cycle, and and there's a lot of work to it. It's very labor intensive, and as we all know, the labor force is getting tougher and tougher all along, and so that's been a big challenge over there.
You've got a beautiful facility there, though. Mm-hmm. And you've had some marvelous and very classy ads on television.
Yeah, the kids have put them all together. They've Cody and Lindsay, they work with the different stations, in the Terre Haute area and everything, and yeah, it's they've done a good job with that.
You mentioned the landscaping. Is that in pretty much for just homes, or
everything?
Commercial work?
They're doing commercial work, and actually they just started that this year. One of the reasons they started that, a lot of the landscapers are tied up, and people were coming in, they want trees planted, and he would go out, Cody would go out and plant the trees, and they'd say, well, what do you think about this or that? And then he got more involved in doing things, and then we're into hardscapes now. He's found an interest. One of the buddies he went to school with, they went ahead, and he's works for a company that out of Arthur, Illinois, that makes the stone. I think it's, can't remember the name of the company, but they make them up there that all your for your retaining walls and your pavers.
Oh, yeah.
So he's
Okay.
gotten started doing that this summer, and it's amazing the kind of job he can do. The design, they've got programs that can go into a person's house and take a picture of it, and they can show you what the landscaping should look like and put these walls and pavers in. And yeah, it's amazing with technology what you can do today, and he's had a lot of interest in that, and it's amazing how many people, for not advertising, just,
Wow.
I mean, it just keeps growing. And so that's one of the areas we're growing into now.
So does Cody do most of the actual design work then?
Mhm,
of,
yeah.
The yards and,
Yeah, the first
Buildings?
project, I thought I better go make sure, because we've been around a lot of that stuff and everything, but I tell you, it amazed me how particular and precise he was on everything. And I mean,
That's what
there's
counts.
nothing that makes you more proud than to go out and the first job. I mean, he knew. I mean, he took his time and just done a perfect job, and that's
and that's what people see.
yeah, yeah.
What about the, I guess the farming and all, do you have particular thoughts on what's changed in the last 30 years? Looks to me like with all the GPS and the modern stuff,
Oh yeah.
it must be a fabulous amount of changes.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's amazing, to go back and in the early, of course, it's one thing I never did. I always plowed when it was, all through the years, and that is one thing I never did. About the time I got ready to plow, I was old enough. They quit plowing, and so that's one thing I always felt like I got deprived of. Is that, I never got to plow. But anyway, throughout the years, the technology, the herbicides, the genetics, the equipment, guidance. I mean, it's just amazing. It's grown in leaps and bounds. And from the day that we run tractors without cabs, and I remember the first, probably in the early 70s, we started with tractors with cabs, and the air conditioners never worked, and it took them several years to figure out how to cool the cabs, and then everything they started adding, and we've probably been in the guidance for 15 years now, maybe. We were one of the first in the area to actually put guidance on the tractors. But I'll tell you, it's a lot less fatigue. The dryer, I mean, you just get in there now, you turn at the ends and shoots arrows through the field, and you got time to, I mean, if your rows are long enough, you can read a magazine, but but you can observe the equipment behind you a lot more. You can see what's going on, and before, he's always concentrating on driving halfway straight anyway. But yeah, with technology today, the hybrids out there, it's just I can remember the milestone at one time was 100 bushel corn, and then I can remember 150, and then 200, and now you're up to 250. Now a lot of your things are, we're striving for 300 bushel corn, and same with beans. They've come a long ways, and now we're looking at that 80 to 100 bushel plateau is what you're shooting for. Hard to get. I mean, we're probably a few years from it, same way at 300 bushel corn, but yield monitors come into play. It's amazing. One thing I always encourage people, if they've never been on the farm, and we highly encourage it, people that haven't been out around the equipment, I mean, we welcome anybody to come out and ride. I mean, a combine is probably the most amazing piece of equipment on the farm. To sit there and watch it run through the field at the speed it does, and watch, for instance, if you're picking corn, watching them ears go in that head, how fast they go in, and turn around and look behind you, and a great big stream of shelled corn coming out, perfectly shelled corn. And always one of the most amazing things that, what a combine can do. Same with beans. You cut them beans, and the pod and everything goes through the combine. You look back, and it's separated all that at the capacity. These combines today are, 35 to 4,500 bushel an hour. They run through, and it's just amazing.
Well, I guess I remember the old idea was a corn picker. And that's basically all it did, would pick the
corn.
ear off, and it still had the corn on the cob.
Yeah. Yep. That and see, that was I can barely remember the eared corn. you know. And but yeah, combines. I remember. I think when I was probably in junior high, we traded combine. I remember we had a deal over at Wild's Farm Equipment in Terre Haute, and we traded combines every year for $1,000.
Really?
And today you don't even touch that, and that's amazing too. And we do have a tractor. I do remember in 1964, in the fall of '64, we bought a brand new 4020 and an 806, and we got delivery about the same time. And if I remember right, the John Deere cost $6,400. The 4020 and the 806 International was $6,200. It's $200 difference between them, and those were pretty big power horses at the time. And now, you know, we've went into a lot of the power equipment we use on the farm. The big tractors are tracks, and now our biggest one's 600 horse, whereas that 806 and 4020, I think they were around around that 90 horse to 100 horse, you know, somewhere in there. And that was a big tractor at the time. So now here we are up to 600 horsepower tractors and everything. So,
Well, I know people who are not familiar with the farm either don't realize the cost of not just the equipment, but the seed and the fertilizer and all these things have just spiraled up tremendously in the last few years.
they have. I mean, it's farm ground's really increased in value, you know, and but still, when you look at the American food source, we're still the cheapest food source out there, and it's all due to the American farmer. I mean, the American farmer is one of the most efficient in the world, and in all your businesses and everything, and but they're always the first to get whacked at when it comes to government policy. You know, it just seems like you know, we don't have the people in position that a lot of your big oil and a lot of these other big industries have, but when it comes down to it, the American farmer is one of the most efficient in the world.
So with all the farm programs that have been in the past, and so many of them, or most of them, have been pretty well X'd out, do you see that probably going to continue?
Yeah, you know, the government, crop insurance has played an important role. Years ago, you never even thought about taking crop insurance out. But you know, when you was grossing $200 to $300 an acre, now you're up to $800 to $1,000 an acre. The risk out there is tremendous, and that's what a lot of people don't understand. You know, they think, well, you know, we don't dictate the price of what we get, and you don't know what Mother Nature's going to do. Mother Nature pretty well let you know what's going to happen, and I mean, there's a lot of difference. It varies from year to year, and prices. I mean, we've seen a range from $3 corn to $8 corn in the last 4 years, and same with soybeans. And the volatility in these markets, it's no longer a market involved in the United States; it's a world market. You know, and so there's just a lot of factors, and farming. Going back to the farm, people don't realize too how professional people, how many areas you have to know. I mean, you know, your mechanics, your electrical, your financings, your marketings, you know, your ability to fix things, repair things, and really, the American farmer does it. He's got a lot of different talents and everything, and they have to be successful. And
the last several years, we've heard a lot about the ethanol, and that's a great source for corn and all these things. Is that going to continue and really be a viable source, you think?
It's great. I mean, to be honest with you, you know, ethanol is a cleaner burning fuel. The efficiency's there, you know, and the need for foreign oil, that was the whole key to this. And I remember when the ethanol plants first come on, corn did go up, and a lot of people blamed those ethanol plants. But at the time, you know, with the money being spent on foreign oil and everything, and I mean, we have everything in the United States we need to take care of ourselves. We don't need everything else out there, but you know, I guess our politicians decide that and everything. But it's the ethanol plants are good. They're good for America. They're good for the farmer. They're good for the public, and it's very good. And they've been around for well, what have they been, 10 years? Let's see, when did they start?
10 to 12.
Yeah, but yeah, it's a good thing.
Oh, we think of soybean oil, and I noticed a lot of other things that the bean is used for. But do you think there's going to be some other things that will develop, like ethanol, in the use of the soybean?
Well, there's a lot of different things out there. Yeah, there's biodiesel. There's other items that will come down the road. Going back to the ethanol plants, there's the byproducts out of them. A lot of people, you've got your ethanol, but then you've got distiller's grain that's fed to the animals. There's germ, and I don't know the exact terminology and all this, but the different things you can get out of a kernel of corn is, I think there's like 6 or 7 different things you can pull out of that kernel.
Something like that one time.
Yeah, and so, and as time goes on, technology goes on, there may be more things, but it's amazing what we come up with, and people set their minds to things, what they come up with and everything. But yeah, there's a lot of things come down the road.
Maybe there's some chemists working on things right now that we don't know about too.
Yeah.
There's something that always fascinated me was the use of computers, and people think, well, probably farm, you have a tractor, you have a field, and but yet, and I don't understand all the things with GPS that I see work, but the use of computer must be a big part of your business anymore too, isn't it?
It is, and you're down to you got your iPads now. I mean, we've got, for instance, we run 2 planters. There's guidance on the on that on both of them, and those planters can talk to each other. And actually, I can be driving down the road with my iPad, and I can watch the performance of each one of those planters, and I can tell you the speed they're going, I can tell you the population they're going, the spacing, I can tell you anything there is that I need to know. And they've got iPads in there that's recording all that, and then too, they're communicating together, and actually those planters could pull in the same field at the opposite sides and work together and come out perfect in the middle. But yeah, it's amazing what they do. Paperwork. There's a lot of paperwork with FSA offices, your crop insurance, and what it's doing, it's integrating all that paperwork for you. So everything is in there, so you can create your reports that, the Farm Service Agency. I mean, there's a lot of work goes into a lot of that stuff with reporting stuff to the government and everything. There's a lot of things. It's a lot of involvement that it takes a lot of time.
Well, it's changed tremendously, and I guess what you're saying is it's probably going to continue to change.
Oh yeah. And you've got all the GMOs. There's a big issue out there with the GMOs we're using now and everything, and it's creating a safer environment. You'll hear the pitch the other way and everything, but we've got the world demand for food in the next 20, 30, 50 years is tremendous, and so technology has to keep moving forward to take care of all the people.
It seems like recently there's been a lot of controversy over the antibiotics and all that's fed to farm animals and what that's doing, and there's antibiotics and stuff in the feed, all of this stuff. What's your take on that?
There is, but on the other hand, I go back and say, well, you've got preservatives in all these foods. I mean, to be honest with you, when you see if you understood how a lot of our products are packaged today and everything, there's a lot more harmful things in there than some of the things. There's growth promotants put in the animals and everything. Does it affect their meat? Well, to a point maybe, but not near what the other things are. And of course, all the cancers out there today, I mean, it's anybody, I mean, everything causes cancer, it seems like, anymore. So but yeah, it's an ongoing, drink 2 or 3 Cokes a day, that's not good for you either. I mean, so to pinpoint one aspect of things is very minute, the antibiotics going into the animals, and it's is it a concern? One thing, there's regulations, and majority of the farmers go by it. I mean, that's the policy, and there's always that one out there that's going to do something different, and it's that way in anything you do. But for the most part, the farmers, with what they're doing, they're very adamant in making sure that they go the extra mile to meet the safety requirements and everything, and I think that speaks well of the field, people that's involved in agriculture. So
there's been some controversy too over the amount, maybe not so much in the United States, but in other countries, the amount of wooded land and rainforests and all these things that are being taken away to get to farmland. And really, maybe a lot of things are being destroyed that shouldn't be.
Yeah, South America is the biggest one. I mean, here, like a year or two ago, they become the largest soybean producer. They took it away from the United States. And years ago, there was hardly anything down there, but they do. They're clearing the forest, and they put restrictions on a lot of that. But, one of the articles the other day said in the next 5 years, I mean, they could predominantly, carry the soybean acreage. I mean, it's a big area down there, and a lot of people, but their infrastructure is not there. I mean, their policies, their government. I mean, it's just it's just not a sound environment to be in. It's very risky and everything, but still, that's farmland that can come into production, and there's a lot of it. But yeah, the rainforest are. I mean, that's a important part of our climate control. Yeah, and so I don't know. That's
Terry. Is there a particular historical event or something in the past that's really influenced you or kind of made you think in a different way?
Oh, I don't know. I have to think about that. I mean, there's one thing in agriculture, or even in your life, there's always change, and you got to adapt to it, and change is always good. And as life goes on, a person has to be open,
Right.
and I mean that's just the process of life, and I think it's that's probably my biggest
To
take
use
on
your
it.
phrase earlier, you got to have patience.
Yeah.
Terry, there's so many modern things we have. Just looking around, conveniences and everything. Is there something that you just simply could not live without?
Well, I'll tell you what, I hate to say it, but it's probably a cell phone. I mean, to be honest with you, I wonder how we ever, I mean, with all the businesses and everything I'm involved with and the calls, I mean, it's amazing at the end of the day to look at your cell phone and how many calls. I mean, if you were to ask me, I'd say maybe a dozen, but at the end of the day, if you count them, there's probably 60 or 70. I mean, it's just, and you don't understand. It's hard to, visualize it, but I mean, it's so common anymore, and you wonder how in the world did you? I mean, you can do everything over a cell phone now, whereas before you sit in an office and use your telephone. So that's made us a lot more efficient. You've got the internet, you've got other things out there. There's a lot of distractions. You got the Facebook. I mean, that's another item. That's a complete different story there. But I don't have Facebook and don't intend to. But it's amazing. The cell phone has made us a lot more efficient and get a lot more things done in a day. And computers. I mean, that's been a big thing. I mean.
But to me today, everyone's on a cell phone or they're texting or something.
Yeah.
It seems to me like there is very few things that could not wait for 30 minutes or an hour.
Yeah.
But yet everyone has to be real time to take care of it. And I don't know if they're really doing anything or not on all this texting, but everyone seems to be looking at their phone.
Yeah, and today you go out and eat, and you look over, and the other night we was there, and there's a family and 2 kids, and the 2 kids were on there texting constantly, and the mother was, and I mean, I guess that's just
not
society.
just the kids.
Yeah, it's just, and it's amazing that you can't. I mean, we try that when we go out to do something. We try just don't even take our cell phones, and a lot of times it's you just kind of part yourself away and from them and everything. That's what my wife always tells me, that we go on vacation, I'm not going to take my cell phone, but you have to. But you limit what you use it for, you know, and everything. So.
Well, Terry, if you were on a trip somewhere and you were on the other side of the water, maybe somewhere in Europe, and you said, I'm from Marshall, Illinois, and they'd say, huh? What would you say to someone about Marshall? What is it? Where is it? And why would they maybe should make a visit here?
Oh, I don't know. It's you know, Marshall's a small town. You pretty well know everybody. It's you know, a lot of organizations that help the community out and everything, and it's very enjoyable. I mean, it's where we grew up. You know, we survived it, so I reckon it's pretty good. But yeah, I always think back, and I'll tell you what really kind of brought back memories. The Road Ranger that went in out here. Now, I hadn't been in there for a while. They opened, what, this spring or something. And I was in there the other day. I had no idea they had all them old pictures. Have you been out there? They've got all the old pictures from Marshall years ago, and the car dealership on Main Street with the old, I'm going to call them Model Ts. That may not be what they are, but that always amazes me.
This building right here was a Ford dealership at one time.
Is that right?
Yeah.
This one here?
Yeah.
But, you know, when you think back, the theater, that was before me. I mean, I think it burnt about the time I was. But I always think of the feed store uptown here, and I mean, just everything. And too, we grew up in the country, so it was something to come to town.
Sure.
Well, that was a delicacy. If you got to come to Marshall, well, that was a big town. I mean, you come up and you bring your pennies and nickels and dimes. That's all you needed back then.
That's right.
Go to the dime store. But yeah, you know, you think back through the years, and you know, I played Little League baseball, and I remember it was always neat to stay with the town kids, stay all night with them. Man, you could ride your bike from the ball field to the house, and come uptown and get you a pop or something. I remember the old soda fountains, you know, they had at 2 or 3 different pharmacies. Yeah. But yeah, I'll tell you, you look back, it's, you know, Marshall's, it's a good little town, and you know, a lot of community support with it, and I think it's a good place to be.
Well, Terry, I think you've said it very, very well. It's been a pleasure visiting with you, and we really appreciate you taking the time out to tell a little bit about your lifetime experiences and become a part of the history of Marshall.
Okay.
We really appreciate that, and thank you so much.
Well, thank you.